Welcome to Future Reimagined, recorded here at the Digital Greenhouse. My name is Charlie J. Sinclair Stott, and in this podcast, I sit down with the innovators, futurists, and local forward thinkers who are shaping what comes next for Guernsey. So today I'm joined by Jack Fletcher from Renew Guernsey. Thank you for coming in, Jack. Would you mind just telling us a little bit about yourself and about Renew, just to get us started?
Yeah, so I'm Jack, Chief Marketing Officer and co-founder of Renew Guernsey. Renew Guernsey is a renewable energy business focused on domestic solar PV and battery storage.
Nice, great.
Yeah.
So a lot of people on Guernsey know you from Renew and just your general work within the energy industry. But before solar panels, you were living the rock and roll dream with the band Of Empires in Brighton, which is how we originally met. So it might not seem like an obvious place for us to begin the podcast, but actually I'd really like to dive into what it was like giving so many years to a career that is infamously unpredictable and risky, and whether that in any way has shaped how you approach business now.
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I think that certainly my experience in that industry has served me for now. You say it was unpredictable, but I guess the story about the band is that we kind of got our big break through winning a competition. MTV had this competition called Brand New Unsigned, and we just recorded an EP at a studio in Brighton, and we were like super happy with it. It sounded like amazing. And I said to my brother, who is a graphic designer and a filmmaker, really, really talented, I said, with your skills and our music, if we enter this competition, so the competition was to like make a short 1 minute video. I was like, we're just going to win it. Like I can just see it now. And we won it. And so that was a springboard, I guess, for everything that happened for the next 5 years from that point. And we got, we're touring around the UK, playing Isle of Wight Festival, Reading Festival, supporting some amazing world-class acts. And so that was an interesting journey. And I learned a lot about marketing.
Yeah.
And really, I guess that experience of winning MTV taught me that that it's all about the story. And if you put together a compelling story, visually, beautifully, then people can latch onto it and follow it.
It is a risk, though. I mean, you guys left Guernsey as a band for like four lads and their partners at the time, just left Guernsey to go and do it. We were together a lot at that time and in music together at that time. And I think it would be a disservice not to call what we were doing risky. It's not seen as a stable career, and it's essentially not a stable career. Not. Essentially, like at the level we were at money on that like toilet circuit. Well, we lost money. Let's not let's not beat around the bush. We were hemorrhaging cash, but we were telling stories. But you've gone into renewables and energy on Guernsey. Surely there's an element of risk there as well. Like you just seem to choose quite a risky career, perhaps.
I mean, all business is risk.
Yeah, of course.
I guess though, I've had a heavy grounding in environmentalism and renewables from a young age, and even the politics of energy as well. Fortunately or unfortunately, I come from a long line of there's quite a few politicians in my family over the years, from my grandfather, great-grandmother, my mother. And so it was a natural sort of progression for me. The business of renewables, it is a tough business because we're in this point of transition. We're transitioning from a carbon-fueled economy to a sustainable one.
Right.
And so there's a lot of policy change that needs to happen. And so, sometimes it feels like you know, fighting battles. So I don't see it risky, but I guess I am attracted to risk.
Yeah, of course. No, you are. I mean, I've known you for long enough to say that you are. But I think we're here mainly to talk about reimagining the future and to do a podcast that is all around the idea of
That's
innovation.
an exciting podcast.
Right.
Right.
So innovation and risk are going to go hand in hand. We're not going to be talking to people who aren't taking massive risks. You know, like when you were in the UK and just before you transitioned back to Guernsey, was there a moment when you kind of realised that actually your heart was out of the music industry and into something new? You know, was there that time where you thought, I need to put my energy actually into building a better system at home and to go home and to innovate and do what you're doing now?
Yeah, I guess kind of what happened really. The music kind of ended, and I was getting quite involved in environmental activism. So blogging, writing a lot. I had my own website, and it was activism, but trying to spin activism in a cool way.
You had the fashion.
Yeah. So
that was cool.
and so I did a lot of that, and then got involved in a lot of protests.
Yeah.
Climate protests, basically. And then the pandemic happened, and because the music had kind of naturally come to an end, I was like, what am I actually doing here? And I read a beautiful quote by a modern philosopher called Charles Eisenstein, and he said, deeply effective activism works at the level of story, but in the long term, effective activism happens through changing the story.
Okay, cool.
And so I was like, yeah, I could like shout about this all I want, but is it really doing anything? And when I heard that quote, it made me want to get stuck in.
Yeah, absolutely.
And be the solution instead of telling other people what the solution.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting from a philosophical point of view because it's essentially just Kantian ethics, but like rehashed for the modern age of, you know, don't shout about what you're doing, do what you're doing, you know, walk the walk. When you're doing that, what do you think is the biggest misconception that people, especially on the island, have around renewables and renewable energy?
I think it's that it's a cost to society.
Okay.
And it's expensive. But when you look at the economics of it all, actually we can't afford not to do it.
Right.
And so I think that's a big misconception. But actually, there's a huge economic opportunity for the island and for the world. One is purely on an industry level. You know, the solar industry, the local renewable energy industry, is already probably a multi-million-pound industry,
right?
Which is kind of right under our noses, and we don't quite see it yet. So it's kind of quietly happening, but actually at quite a fast pace.
Okay.
But I think that the opportunity for industry, because the renewables industry crosses everyone from architects to builders to scaffolders, electricians. It touches all corners of the construction industry on a micro renewables level. And so the opportunity just economically as an industry is huge, you know, creating new jobs, you know, meaningful, well-paid jobs. But then also the economic opportunity is for the island as a whole. So we've worked out that potentially over the next 25 years, the renewable energy industry could be worth something like £2 billion in terms of what the island can save.
Yeah,
and that's
absolutely.
not taking into account heat pumps and electric vehicles.
Okay.
And I think that's probably a conservative estimate. But, you know, if you work out, well, you look across the island, you've got 30,000 homes across the island. some homes might not be able to put any solar panels on. Townhouses could be quite tricky, but some might be able to put 5 kilowatts on. Some might be able to put 10 kilowatts on. Some roofs might be able to put 100 kilowatts on. We've got some big roofs out there. We worked out, across the island, you could get an average of around 10 kilowatts of solar PV. And so, typically a 10 kilowatt system could be saving a home anything from £1,500 to £2,000, for example. So if you multiply that across the island over the next 25 years, the economic opportunity is enormous.
Yeah, it's huge. Like you've detailed that really clearly. And with everything you're saying, there is still a kind of, I don't want to call it a reluctance around renewables, because it's not necessarily a reluctance, but there is just an energy of, it's costly, it's just a lot to put up front. Yet everything you've just said is completely contrary to that. How do you change that narrative? Like, what is this, especially on somewhere like Guernsey, which is famously, we call ourselves donkeys. We're stubborn. We know what we know and we like what we know. You're doing this business in somewhere that has that attitude. Does that make innovation hard, and how are you tackling that?
The hardest thing that we're up against at the moment is energy policy, if I'm being honest. And the energy policies, Pathway D that's just been voted in, etc. It doesn't seem to talk too much about micro renewables, for the home. And so I'm not being critical, but as I was saying before, this industry is a multi-million-pound industry that already exists, and I haven't seen anyone up in high offices talk about. We don't know how many solar systems there are across the island at the moment. There's probably about 1,000.
Okay.
So I think we've got a way to go on policy. We've got an election coming up in Guernsey, and there's going to be a new assembly, and so there was a 7-year pathway to net zero plan that was going to be discussed in this state's assembly, but I think now that's been deferred to the next one, which I think is a good thing. But what my advice would be to the next deputies would be, we need to get this right. So this policy should not be rushed through. And I think we need to listen to all the local renewable energy providers, because there's not just us, there's others in the islands that have real world data. We can look at the data and we can share the data, but no one's asked us for the data, which is a bit alarming.
Yeah, absolutely it is.
So I think that's our biggest challenge is policymakers. But what I will say is that change is happening very quickly. The technology has been around for a while, and it is starting to become more mature, but also the cost of it is starting to come down.
Right.
And so, I'm doorstepping every day, and I'm meeting everyday islanders and hearing their pain points and what they want. And this stuff is going in. So batteries and solar is already ubiquitous across the island. A lot of them you just don't see, because they're in someone's garden or whatever. But it's an industry that is quietly getting on with it. And I think, I estimate conservatively, if we have about 1,000 systems out there, we could be saving the island potentially £2 million a year already. Just with this burgeoning industry.
So these are kind of positive figures for Guernsey generally, but obviously what you do is not all about just the positive messaging that you're talking about here. Like, you're a business and you need to make money, essentially. What is it like every day when you actually have to go to work and you want to be driven by like a higher purpose, like you're talking about, but you're trying to balance that with the idea of actually making a sustainable business that's going to work for you? Is there ever a discourse between the two?
I think for me, what we do, and the guys that work in our team, we are driven by this purpose. We've got a vision and mission. I think every business needs a strong vision and mission. Every organisation does.
Absolutely.
And our vision is for everyone to generate their own energy. And our mission is to rapidly roll out renewables to reverse climate change. And that means implementing micro renewables on a macro scale. And we came up with that a couple of years ago as kind of our North Star. And the big why drives you in the difficult times.
Okay.
Hopefully that answers your question.
It does. I mean, you definitely have a reputation for this as a human being, because it goes back to music, right? Like the big why was what was driving of empires or anything that we were doing together. It wasn't driven by, are we going to break even with this? It was to do with the big why. You mentioned doorstepping and being out there, like literally talking to islanders daily, I'm sure from like a huge cross section of different people on the island as well. So going back to innovation, what does innovation actually mean at a street level? Because it's constantly spoken about as like a corporate buzzword. Let's not beat around the bush, but it is a real thing, and it really means change. So what is innovation at street level when you're doorstepping?
I think it's about improving people's lives.
Yeah.
And that could be economically. It could be from a altruistic perspective. So people do want to feel like they're doing change in the world, and helping the world go in a different direction, a better direction. But innovation, has always, like the world that we live in now, from medical to the comfort of our homes, that's all innovation.
Of course.
So I think on a street level, it's about improving people's well-being and lives, and also prosperity. We want to feel like everyone in society can self-actualize, and I think technology and innovation is allowing that. And look at social media now, and a lot of people, young people now, have really used that technology, social media, to create careers, whether that's being a YouTuber or starting a marketing agency or whatever. I think we live in a really exciting, profound time, and I think that technology and innovation improves lives more than it.
That's interesting. Yeah, because there's obviously a dark side to innovation as a whole. Like ultimately, we're making our lives easier every day with every time we create one of these innovations, to the point where we're automatically sending emails and all this. Are we just becoming lazy because other people are making like these internal changes? So it's nice to hear an optimistic approach toward it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm reading this book at the moment called Stella, and it's a fantastic book about looking at, like, historically, how did humanity become a civilization? And that was through an extractive process of extracting resources from the earth, whether that's, agriculture, and then extracting, fossil fuels from the ground. Okay, we later on find out that fossil fuels pollute the earth, but without fossil fuels, we wouldn't have got to where we are. And we wouldn't have, been able to improve people's lives, and people wouldn't have been able to live longer.
Constant learning, essentially, then, isn't it?
So what this book is talking about is, like, we're in a constant transition.
Okay.
And so right at the beginning of civilization, villages would be at war with each other, fighting over resources and fighting over land. And that still continues to this day. But this book talks of hope and optimism that we are in a period of transition to a cleaner economy, to clean technology, where we don't need to be so extractive anymore. Okay, so we're not extracting fossil fuels anymore. And so, I mean, you look at the history of humanity, and things are so much better than they were.
I mean, day to day they are. Yeah, absolutely.
And so that's, you have to be stubbornly optimistic.
Yeah, do you think that goes hand in hand with your career path?
World.
Like,
you have to,
when you're doing that.
I verge on both, though.
Well, yeah, you do. It's interesting to hear you talk about that, because what you're saying right now, you've voiced those same opinions through a pessimistic lens to me before.
Yeah.
So do you feel like you have to kind of choose whether you're an optimist or a pessimist depending on who you're talking to make the right point and to get across to people?
Yeah, I mean, it depends when you wake up in the morning, which side of the bed you roll out on. And then
Yes, it does.
And then I've stopped reading the news first thing in the morning.
And last thing at night.
Yeah, we're going through obviously a huge global change at the moment in terms of politics and things like that.
But you're going through a huge personal change as well.
Yeah.
So you've just had your first kid.
Yeah.
So like any existential threat or anything larger than that right now, like how is that changing the way you see your work in the eyes of now having Bjorn?
Yeah. So I'm going to just like totally take this away from me for a second.
Okay. Yeah.
I was watching an interview with Charlie Brooker the other day.
Right.
Who created Black Mirror.
Yeah.
And he was asked like a similar thing about his children. And like, because Black Mirror is like, you know, a commentary on
super dystopian.
Yeah. Technology in the world. And and basically it's called Black Mirror because it's offering a black mirror on the world, you know, all the worst things that could possibly, could happen. And he said that he has to force himself to be optimistic for his children. Right. Because otherwise, if he wasn't, then, you know, how are they going to feel about it? I think
that's why I don't have kids, and I don't know if I've got it in me.
But I guess for me, since my baby boy is born, he's only like 3.5 months old.
Yeah. But he has the hair of a 3-year-old.
He
does. Look at him go.
I don't think my outlook on the world has particularly changed. I still have the same values, but it's reinforced my values. And it's kind of made me a bit more confident in communicating it. And because I realised that it's really important.
Yeah. Do you think about the future in the eyes of your child a lot, or is it something you try and put off visualising?
Yeah, it's weird. It's like having a child, you have this total, like it is true what they say, like you do see the world in a profoundly different way. And yeah, I was thinking about this the other day when I was looking at him as a 3-month-old. One day he's going to be, you know, in his 50s or 60s or 70s or 80s.
I'm like,
and I was, yeah, probably have quite good laser surgery by then. But yeah, I was kind of thinking, what kind of a world is it going to be when he's like in his twilight years?
Right.
And it kind of terrified me.
Really?
Yeah, because
what came to your mind when you thought of that?
Because the science says that if we don't, sort climate out, this is, an ever warming world we're going to have to live in. And like if it was to hit 3 degrees or 4 degrees, that's just like terrifying.
Right.
So yeah, I guess it has changed me a little bit. I think actually really the way I see people now is like everyone was a baby once. And I can't explain it, but I kind of just see everyone like that. And so I guess I have more of a respect for human beings now.
That's
even
super
with people
interesting.
with people that I don't agree with. I have empathy for. It's strange.
So my friend Greg, who you know a little bit, said literally almost word for word what you've just said.
Yeah.
About just like the humanization of people post-baby is just massive because everyone's got a dad, everyone's got a mum, or at some point had a dad or a mum. And it's wild. Tell me, in terms of like narrative then of that, tell me about a story recently or anything recently that made you think like, this is why I do this. Like, I'm in the right industry and this is what it is.
I got a WhatsApp message from a client. It was an email, and it was like, it must have been like 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Particularly great day of sunshine, and and he was like, my system is like producing 2 kilowatts, my batteries are topped up, and I'm exporting to the grid, and it just feels good.
Yeah.
And that you get a kick out of that. And and we get those messages often.
Okay.
And I guess it feels quite empowering for people as well. But also it feels empowering from an energy independence perspective. But when you're also exporting your energy to the grid, you're sharing your renewable energy with your community as well.
Yeah.
And you get paid for it.
Great.
So it's a real great feel-good factor. And we always have happy, smiley faces at the end of a project. So it happens all the time, and it just feels really good that you're, making people happy, but you're improving their lives as well.
Yeah, and that qualitative feedback is something that people like. Companies work so hard to try and get people to give qualitative feedback in that way. So the fact that you're just getting text messages saying it is super handy for your business and just for your mental well-being, to be honest.
Yeah.
So that's rad.
Yeah.
That's super cool. So where I'm going to go back to the band a little bit for a second, because you were a band, but
all roads lead back to
everything.
The band.
You'll never get away from it.
No.
But the thing that I, as a younger person, was so like in awe of, not only the music, but the brand around it, the narrative, the storytelling, the world building that happened. So you clearly have a huge marketing instinct. You're the chief of marketing at Renew. Do you have a master plan for marketing renewables that goes bigger than just Renew? Do you have a vision? Do you have a way of communicating it that you think can connect? Like, think outside of Guernsey here as well. Like, how is this going to land as a subject for people so that it's not scary or challenging or too expensive, like you said earlier?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly feel that we haven't communicated our story the way I would like to yet.
Okay.
But behind the scenes, we're in the process of doing a bit of a rebrand. So new logo, and I'm actually working with my brother, who's extremely talented designer, on this at the moment.
Nice.
And it occurred to me when we were bumping heads together, and it's like, what do we want the logo to look like?
Mm-hmm.
How do we want to communicate? All this kind of stuff. And we realized, like, actually it's just about the story. So it's about creating an emotional story and telling other people's stories as well. So all of our clients have a story.
Yeah.
And because we live in an island, we are deeply connected to nature, actually, and deeply connected to the sun. And, a lot of people go out kayaking or just love to sun worship down the beach or play football or whatever. And we realized that all of our clients, they're all really interesting people, and they all do different things. And so I think going forward, we want to tell their story.
Nice.
About their connection with the sun.
Just doing it on a human
and
level.
The islands.
Yeah. Love
it. I feel, though, going back to the band and kind of just marketing in general, like, sort of my philosophy is, it's just about communicating a compelling story and connecting with people emotionally.
But you did build a full world, though.
Yeah.
It existed completely in monochrome. It was stylized within an inch of its life in such a cool way that you'd built essentially an alternate reality of what you and the boys were and what the band was. Like, you can't really do that with renewables and energy, because essentially what you're trying to sell is like the world itself. But I guess what you can do is you can sell a vision of the future through these people.
Yeah, but it's also it's a collaborative change. So what you're doing is essentially, if you own a home and you put solar panels on it and you put a battery on the wall and you buy an EV, you're actually tangibly contributing to real change.
Right.
And so
interesting. Yeah.
I think that that actually that's quite easy to communicate.
It is, but people love a doom and gloom story around
Yeah,
change.
yeah.
So
That's the thing about climate change is that it's such a doom and gloom story. And yes, we really need to change that story. Because,
that narrative needs to reverse.
Because, there's some great, podcasts and YouTube shows like Fully Charged, for example.
Right.
Robert Llewellyn, who was in Red Dwarf.
Okay.
Do you remember Red Dwarf?
Yeah, man. Yeah.
He was the robot in Red Dwarf.
No way.
So he's got this show focused on electric vehicles, but all sorts of things to do with solar and batteries. And what they do is they review the latest electric vehicle that comes out and stuff like that. And so it's just really exciting. And it's technology. It's so cool.
Yeah,
it's like, and I think everyone could just get involved in this. And it's like, just by buying an electric vehicle, you are changing the world. But also, it's just an electric vehicle that's going to get you around. But actually, the most important story about the electric vehicle is that I've got an electric car, and it's just, I will never go back to a petrol car.
Okay.
And the statistics, apparently, of people that go electric never go back to a fossil fuel car again, because they're cheaper to run, and so very little service and maintenance, super easy to drive, smooth. I was driving a courtesy car the other day, which is a petrol car.
You would be such a good car salesman. just to tell you right now, I'm going to go and buy an electric car after this.
I mean, my favorite electric car is Rivian.
Careful
but what I love about Rivian is that they're really great at communication.
Right.
They just sponsored the South by Southwest festival.
Yeah. So they know their target market.
Yeah, and their target market is like exploration, and it's geared towards those kind of people that like to get out into the outdoors.
Cool.
In trucks and stuff like that.
So that's essentially
I'm waffling on, but
that's essentially what you're looking for in renewables. Like electric vehicles have marketed themselves really well, and like I said, it's been on exploration, things like that. Before we move on, 3 words that you would want to market renewable energy on that you think would connect and have a narrative behind them.
3 words.
3 words.
Just
on the
3
spot.
words.
Yeah, I've thrown this one on
to
you.
Communicate renewables.
Yeah.
Okay.
In a way that you think would land with people.
Yeah, empowering, independence, excitement. Yeah.
I think, that's cool. I mean, independence, particularly, I think, with what's happening with energy is massive. So before we start to wrap things up, I have a challenge for you.
Yeah.
I'm going to try and do a segment of this podcast with every guest where they have to reimagine like an everyday item. So it could be a mug or whatever it is. So if I give you just something that I use every day, I want you, and whatever reimagine means to you as well, be loose with it. Can you reimagine a backpack for me? Like completely reimagine or innovate with it?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Backpack.
Yeah.
Reimagined. So, okay, so this is like I'd say it's like the backpack of the future.
Right.
And so it's completely made out of sustainable materials like mushroom leather or like hemp or something.
Okay.
But then it's like got solar cells in it, so it can generate energy.
Charging,
You've got a battery in there. Like batteries in the future are going to be like crazy. It's going to be nuts. And so it's like geared towards the explorer type person.
Yeah.
So you could, because it's got a battery, you can charge your phone or your drone or augmented reality headset, which you could use
to explore with.
Yeah. So you can look up at the stars and it would create a map of the something like that. And it's magnetic. So,
And it's magnetic.
so you can, have tools that will just stick.
That's cool. That's cool. Okay.
Yeah.
So a magnetic mushroom solar bag.
Yeah.
Patent it right now. Get it out there. I mean, it sums up like where innovation can start there. It just starts with spitballing, right? And just imagining like what is a ludicrous change and then how do we actualize that? So to finish up, I kind of wanted to just imagine what Guernsey could be like in 20 years for you if people like yourself and like many who are working within the digital greenhouse and are within our wider community continue innovating on the level that they are and promoting positive real world change through technology like they are. Give me a couple of sentences. 20 years from now, Guernsey, what could we be?
I think we could be a community that is energy independent from the rest of the world, self-sufficient, so not just energy but food as well. I think that's extremely important. We are islanders, and I think we forget that.
Yeah.
Because we have fast travel. Sometimes it can feel like we live in a town just outside London, but actually, if you get some poor weather, your shelves are empty. Yeah. So I think food sustainability is like really, really important. I think technology can help that. In 20 years, self-sufficient island would be great. I could see robotics becoming ubiquitously used, not just in industry, but in the home.
Mm-hmm.
And so you could power those robotics by renewable energy, of course. But I think automation and robotics are the next kind of big industry, which is going to complement all industries,
especially
construction.
Power,
So I actually think that autonomy and democracy of technology and energy is going to profoundly change the whole world, but also Guernsey as well. We've already got 3D printing, so I'm interested to see, how people could develop small businesses using new technology coming along.
I mean, that's the future that we are here to reimagine. So thank you for that. Jack, you've been the perfect first guest for me. So thank you so much for coming in. And at the Digital Greenhouse right now, we've got a bunch of events coming up with innovation. We've got our Innovation Summit on the 5th of June, which is going to be all around ideas like this, a little bit more workforce focused, but all about how we can continue to imagine those changes. So maybe see you that. And thank you for being here. That was Future Reimagined.